Hey, here we are with another installment of Philly 101, and this time we're talking about real estate taxes. So, if you own a property in Philadelphia, this is a reality. Actually, if you own a property anywhere, this is a reality. But here's how it works in Philadelphia. So, taxes, property are taxed two ways. There is a land tax, which is based on the assessed value of the land, and then a building tax. So that's the assessed value of the building or structure that's on it. Those two taxes are variable. So the land tax can rise or fall with sort of the overall value of the area. And the building, if you, or the house, if you make major improvements or sort of do anything to increase the value, that's going to increase the assessment. So those two numbers can work independently of each other, but then are combined, and that is your total assessed value. Now, that assessed value is then multiplied by 1.3998, which gets you to your tax value. So if, for the sake of easy math, your house is assessed at $100,000, so you've got a $20,000 land assessment, you've got an $80,000 building assessment, together you've got $100,000 times 1.3988 gets you a tax bill of $139. All right, that's the sort of simple structure behind it. Now, where it gets a little funky, assessments. So the city goes through every now and then, and I say every now and then because there is no set schedule. Unfortunately, this is a bigger problem in areas where the values are rapidly shifting. So for the sake of example, I lived in Point Breeze for 10 years at a property. When I bought my house in 2012, the taxes were $250 a year. By the time I left 10 years later in 2022, the values had shifted up enough, and my house, through the assessment process, my taxes were raised to $2,500 a year. Now, that was manageable for me. It gets difficult for my elderly neighbors who had lived in the neighborhood for 40 years. And on a fixed income, they did not have the same financial capacity that I did. And it's an issue. So there are programs in place to help. First off, homestead exemption. Every landowner or property or house owner in Philadelphia that lives in their property, every owner-occupied house in Philadelphia is entitled to the homestead exemption. And what that does is it automatically lowers the assessment by $80,000. You have to apply for it. If you own your house and live in it, you're automatically going to get it, but you do have to go through the process of applying. Now, we go back to simple math, right? So you've got the $100,000 house. You apply for the homestead exemption because you own the house and you live there. It automatically drops the assessment down to $20,000, which you go through the multiplier. I mean, you're not even going to have a tax bill, but just to sort of show you how that math will work. So there are also other programs based around age. So there are some programs for elderly homeowners. There's some based around income. There's one called the LOOP program, the long-time owner-occupant program. So if you live in your house for at least 10 years, and in the past, I believe it's 3 years or so, there's been a significant jump in the assessment or in the appreciation of your house, you can apply to have your taxes frozen at a certain amount. So there are resources available, and we'll have all the links in the caption to those. The other piece of the tax process or tax view in Philadelphia are abatements. So this was a program that was started in 2000, and the city of Philadelphia said if you purchase land and build a new home, a new house, apartment, something for someone to live in, you can abate the building portion of the taxes to wherever they were when construction was done. So basically, you get the ability to erase any tax increase based on that new construction. So a lot of the newer construction houses in Philadelphia have had abatements, and those last for 10 years. Now, flash forward, 2022, that program is being wound down. Now, you can apply for an abatement and you can get it, but it's a step down system. So the first year, you're going to get 100% abated tax on the building portion of your assessment. Second year is 90, third 80, 70, all the way down to 0. So essentially that step down cuts the overall abatement in half. Where this may come into play for anybody looking at houses or coming to Philadelphia or sort of, hitting the Zillow at 3 a.m, and you see something that says 10-year tax abatement, or you see 4 years remaining on a tax abatement or 3 years. Here's what that means. At some point, that house was built, the purchaser took over the house. At that point, the abatement kicked in and somebody has lived there, say 6 years, they've used 6 years of the abatement, you purchase the house, you get the remaining 4. So for 4 years, you get your land taxes still fluctuating, but that building tax assessment level is going to be at wherever it was before the house was built 6 years prior. Here's what it also means. In 4 years, when that abatement comes off, your house will be taxed at whatever the assessment is. Again, this is where we get back into the assessment schedule. So this is a huge issue for a lot of cities with rapidly appreciating areas. Ultimately, I think a lot of cities would like to be able to reassess every year to have a more accurate view, have no real big jumps in values, to be able to have a better data set around values, but it's really labor intensive. So they can't. And the problem then is whenever you do it, there's going to be sort of bigger jumps. So if you are coming in and you purchase a house that has a couple of years left on the abatement, whenever that abatement falls off, if your house is in the process of just being reassessed, your taxes could be really high. If it's a house that hasn't been reassessed for a while, it could be lower. It's not a system that you can really sort of plan out. In some ways, basically, you have to just look at whatever you've paid. Here's how I work through it. If you were coming to me and saying, all right, I'm buying this house and there's 2 years left on the abatement, and how do I know what's going to happen when the abatement comes off? I'm going to say, let's take what you paid for the house and multiply that by the 1.3988. And that's going to be your worst case scenario tax bill. Because there is also a process in place where you can go and contest an assessment. Now, if your assessment is less than you actually paid for the house, like if the city of Philadelphia says, we think this is what your house is worth in the open market and it's considerably less than what you actually paid for it, do not contest it, because there's a very good chance they could be like, oh, thank you for showing us the error of our ways. We will now raise your assessment, because clearly if you paid X for the house, it's definitely not worth Y. So if it is a situation where your assessment is more than what you paid for the house, then that is the process where you can go in and have the assessment lowered. So go back to, you're coming to Philly, you're buying a house, there's 2 years on the assessment, 2 years on the abatement. We're going to go in, we're going to take the value that you paid for your house, we're going to take that through the multiplier, we're going to get that to the tax value and be able to somewhat, with the most confidence we can, this is going to be your tax bill when that abatement comes off, to give you the most full picture possible of what your taxes could be. So yeah, that's the story. That's how it works here. There'll be lots of links in the captions. And you can come back to our YouTube video to get lots more information on life in Philly.